Follow the instruction that will be to your ultimate benefit. Let's learn from the book of Jonah. In the book of Jonah, it discusses how the word of the Lord came to Jonah, go to the great city of Nineveh. God had business for Jonah to do there, in particular, the Lord's business. God did not care for what was occurring there and wanted Jonah to speak out against it. However, the book tells us that instead of responding in the affirmative and complying, Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. It reads, he went down to Joppa where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. This was probably not a good idea. He was given specific instruction and alternatively ran away and failed to comply. In 1 Corinthians 10:13 it says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Further, in Deuteronomy 31:8 it says, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Nevertheless, Jonah acted as described. It goes on to say, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a massive storm arose that the ship was about to break apart. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. Then the sailors said to each other, come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity. They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? From where do you come, etc.? He answered with who he was, and that he worships the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. This terrified them, and they asked, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. This is interesting because earlier it says that each cried out to his own God, yet the captain told Jonah, get up and call on your God, even though he may not have worshipped him. And here it says when Jonah said he worshiped the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land, it then says they were terrified. Yet again, they may not have worshipped him. It also may have frightened them, as Jonah said, the Lord, the God of heaven, is the one who made the sea and the dry land. And they were at sea and in the middle of a huge storm with the ship they were now on being in jeopardy. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. So Jonah had great self and situational awareness at this time. He says how he knew if he was removed from the situation, the environment will become calm, and that he understands that it is his fault that this great storm is occurring. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land. This may have been because they had some reverence toward Jonah's God. Again, as it says, they were terrified when Jonah said he worships the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and dry land. Although Jonah worshipped God, but yet did not comply with God's instruction and was non-responsive to his authority. It goes on to read, but they could not, with regards to removing Jonah, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, please, Lord, do not let us be harmed for this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for doing what they were about to do to an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased. So now it sounds like they were pleading to God, a God they seemingly did not know and worship. Then they took Jonah and put him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. What a relief it must have been for them to go from a major storm to calm, still waters. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they made an offering to the Lord and made vows to him. Just by observation of his power and Jonah speaking of and confirming his sovereignty, these men started making vows to Jonah's God. This must have been very powerful. In Matthew 19, it says how with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So we understand God's power. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. In Matthew 12, we read about the sign of Jonah. It says, Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to Jesus, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. Jesus answered how a wicked generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now something greater than Jonah is here. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. Now this was a smart move as opposed to his earlier action when it says how he ran away from the Lord. Jonah said, In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm I called for help, and he listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. Now Jonah certainly must have been terrified. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters came upon me, the deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. Again, we see how with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord. This is good. It is unfortunate for him he did not recall earlier, but nevertheless. And my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. In Psalm 135 we read, The idols of the nations are silver and gold, made by human hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak, eyes, but cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear, nor is there breath in their mouths. It continues, But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will make offering to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, Salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it spewed Jonah onto dry land. The power of prayer. Jonah prayed, and it says the Lord commanded the fish, and it spewed Jonah onto dry land. So we will stop here. Following the instruction would have been to Jonah's benefit, but yet nonetheless, we see it says that Jonah said, But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. Please support this channel, like, subscribe. Thank you, and stay focused.